All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and I want to start today by dispelling a piece of FUD. Then I've got a few things I want to talk to you about: de-dollarization, inflation, and Bitcoin being the exit, of course. Then I'm going to show you a couple of interesting pieces of news, a couple of interesting charts, and then we'll leave you on a meme. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, sit back, relax, hit that like button, and let's get into it. There are currently a lot of rumors, a lot of speculations that because some of these old Bitcoin wallets that range from around 9 to I think 12 years old perhaps are starting to shuffle Bitcoin around. There's speculation that since they own many thousands of Bitcoin, these might all get dumped onto the market and Bitcoin's price may tank. I've also seen speculation that the wallet generator that was used from all the way back a decade ago or so is likely compromised. And the facts are the facts, okay? It just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the latter is true. If these wallet addresses, if the wallet generator, I should say, had been compromised because it is now a decade old, then does that really mean that all these Bitcoin can make it onto the spot market to be dumped? Well, the answer is no. It's quite difficult to hack a bunch of Bitcoin and just dump it on the open market for fiat currency. There isn't the liquidity on the peer-to-peer exchanges to do that. So if you're going to use a mainstream exchange, then you're going to have to go through KYC and stuff as you exit to fiat. So is it likely that this is going to happen? No. If they are found to be stolen, if they're found to be reported to be hacked or something like that, then the coins can get blacklisted, and then that really kind of does keep them from being sold on the spot market anytime in the foreseeable future. And it's also worth noting that if you had, I don't know, 10,000 Bitcoin that you'd accumulated from 10 years ago, would you just dump all of them on the open market? Probably not. This is the thing, probably not, right? You might want to take some profit since you've waited a decade, but are you just going to dump your entire stash? Like, no, you're not, okay? So anyway, this is kind of nonsense, and it's pointed out here, it's really not that uncommon to see Bitcoin old wallets start to become active during price corrections, especially during bear markets. In the whole grand scheme of things, it's minimal sell pressure for the reasons that I cited earlier. Some accounts will cause FUD, and of course they will. People love to panic, people love to have a narrative for the dip, people demand an explanation, but as you can see, when we get dips, we get big spikes in the old 7 to 10 year wallet addresses. So anyway, if you were concerned about that, I personally am not. I think something that is a lot more concerning in the real world is that 70% of the trades between China and Russia are now settled in Chinese yuan or Russian rubles. Okay, so this is stripping away dollar demand. This is stripping away dollar dominance. It continues because you can see that we are ready to give businesses the opportunity to settle foreign trade in Bitcoin and crypto, according to the Russian central bank governor. And the Russian finance minister is now saying a new payment system will be unrestricted for the use of cryptocurrency in cross-border payments. So Russia is ready. Russia has had enough of being sanctioned, and Russia is moving away from the dollar. One of the biggest issues here is as we move away from the dollar will decrease in value, and the US, because it is the world reserve currency, has the luxury of being able to export its inflation to other countries and nations. Bitcoin is going mainstream at Zurich Airport, and I don't think it's coincidence. I don't think it's coincidence that as we see the debasement of fiat currencies, we see an uptick in the demand for Bitcoin. As you can see here, this is at the airport in Switzerland. Over in the UK, we are currently sat on a 16% month-over-month inflation rate. The UK government is only reporting 10.1% for their CPI metric. Now, I've said this many times before. Do not make the mistake of thinking it can't happen here just because you have the luxury of living in America or the UK or Europe. It's happening in the UK right now. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. I prepared a small spreadsheet just to illustrate how severe 16% inflation is. If you start with 100k, after 1 month, needless to say, you've lost £16,000, okay? After just 4 months, you've lost half of your money. You will have only £49,787 left if you started with 100k, and that equates to a loss, of course, of just over £50,000. You can see, walking forward, if this inflation rate persists for a full 12 months, you will have lost 87,659 of your 100k starting capital, and you'll be left with just 12,000. Okay, this is the damage that 16% compounded inflation really does to your average Joe. And wait for it, Because how does the Bank of England respond to this? What do they have to say to the people of the UK? They indeed have to say nothing more than people in the UK just need to accept that they are poorer. Yes, I'm being 100% serious. Britons need to accept they're poorer, according to the Bank of England economist. So again, don't make the mistake of thinking this stuff can't happen to you. It's happened to Argentina right now, and it honestly, if this continues, it's going to happen in the UK much sooner than most people are anticipating. Over in Argentina, they've got an annual inflation rate of over 100%. This means 45 million plus people watching their savings devalued by 50% in just 12 months. Currently, Michael Saylor has pointed out that the informal rate to swap the Argentinian peso for dollar is currently at 7.58% inflation per day. This is the current reality of what happens when a fiat currency collapses. And as I often say, Bitcoin is the exit, of course. You can see here the Bitcoin price is at all-time highs against the Argentinian peso. Meanwhile, the likes of the cartel and mafia type organizations such as the IMF are ready to step in and bail out Argentina. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I've definitely mentioned it before. The reason I refer to the IMF as a cartel-like or mafia-like organization is because they play the game just like a mafia would. What they do is they wait for a currency or a country to collapse, then they offer it a loan or a bailout that they know that country or nation will never be able to pay back. And thus, it puts the country or nation in the pocket of the IMF. It takes away the country or nation's ability to be self-sovereign and independent, and they will forever be indebted and enslaved to the cartel, the mafia-like organization that is the IMF. This is why, when El Salvador adopted the Bitcoin standard, the IMF went out of their way to beg and plead with many, many other countries and nations not to follow suit. They also fudded the Bitcoin standard that El Salvador embraced time and time again. They put out loads of fake news, loads of articles, loads of even fake documentaries that showed the people in El Salvador were miserable about this adoption of the Bitcoin standard, which was just simply not true. And the reason they do this is because they don't want countries to be self-sovereign. Instead, they want everyone to be poor. They want the nations and the countries to be forced to accept these bailouts and accept these loans and therefore never be self-sovereign. And you'll notice that there's merit to what I'm saying, because the IMF is now saying it will bail out Argentina only if they adopt an anti-crypto stance. Of course, a pro-crypto stance such as El Salvador is much better. El Salvador have already proven this now, and they have paid off their existing loans to the IMF. El Salvador are now fully self-sovereign. And of course, this is all thanks to adopting the Bitcoin standard. Bitcoin really is the exit, not just for the individual, but for the nation, the state, and the country as well. Some of the US senators understand this. Ted Cruz, Cynthia Lummis, and Congressman Tom Emmer are going to speak at Bitcoin Policy Summit in DC tomorrow, I think that's today, on how Bitcoin could benefit the country. Nobody is safe from these CBDCs. This is the thing. Many people are working on these CBDCs and they don't realize that they are working on their very own enslavement. Nobody will be safe unless you are a top level person at the central bank. More and more people are starting to work this out. We're starting to realize this and watch this happen in real time. Ultimately, there is going to be a battle between freedom, Bitcoin, and enslavement via CBDCs. I believe the future is bright. I believe the future is full of hope. And that is all thanks to Bitcoin. Furthermore, have you noticed this chart here? This is the chart for First Republic Bank. So apparently, this banking crisis is not yet over. Again, another reason you should be using Bitcoin, gold, and silver to exit this system. As it stands, Bitcoin remains as an uptrend. As you can see here, this is a very simplistic way of looking at whether or not we're in an uptrend. When we're above the band, and the band has a green line above the red line on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a green line on the top, yellow space in the middle, and a red line on the bottom. When green is above red and price is above the band, then we are in an uptrend. That's exactly the conditions we have today. And of course, the inverse is true. When the price is below the band, the green is below the red, then we are in a downtrend. As it stands today, we are still bullish long term. And finally, just before we get into some charts, I wanted to make something very clear. Again, I often say this, forgive me for repeating myself, but you do not have to take a side. You can have Bitcoin, gold, and silver. The central banks know that the collapse of the currencies is coming. Central bank gold purchases have soared of late, have reached a rate not seen since the late 1960s, as you can see right here. So make no mistake about it, the central banks are not about to throw all that gold away. There is a place for Bitcoin, gold, and silver. It's better to have a stable of horses rather than one really fast horse. And so moving into the charts, because we've got a couple of interesting developments, I think it's safe to say you're mostly going to hear me repeat myself for the next sort of 10 days. So I will spare you. I won't give too much detail. I'll try to just sort of point out things and say, this is what I reckon is going to happen. But I think the read is quite clear. As it stands for me, the dollar, whether it goes slightly up first or whether it chops around, I still think it's going to eventually lose this box. It's going to lose this level and break down, and we're going to be heading towards 95, 96. Here's Bitcoin. So Bitcoin doing exactly what I thought it might do, which is get a kind of counter trend bounce out of here before rolling over into that 60-day cycle low due around the 9th of May, plus or minus 6 days, which is 10%. So that's what I'm looking for. We've got the counter trend bounce now. I like to see this. Now, invalidation for this low coming below this current low, which is the current setup, would be if we broke out of this downward sloping blue resistance line and recovered this upward sloping blue resistance line. So if I clean this up for you, if we do something like this, right, and then resume up, then we can say with confidence the 60-day cycle low is going to form much higher up than I've got it here. But as it stands, given that I think the top for this current cycle is here, I think that's it, then all we're seeing, in my opinion at the moment, is that counter trend bounce before then rolling over into that 60-day cycle low. So like I said, invalidation if we get back above these levels. If not, then expect these lows to be taken out as we drop into that cycle low time frame around the 9th of May. Gold, similarly, still expecting this to form part of a counter trend bounce before rolling over into that cycle low due around the 9th of May as well, and then going. We will see if that plays out. And for the stocks, look, the stocks have lost this level. We thought this would happen. Are we going to lose the big red one as well? Quite possibly. But again, I would not be surprised to see some level of counter trend bounce here before then dropping into that cycle low. The ideal scenario for a S&P 500 low is to come down, bounce up, undercut that low, and then that low there should hopefully form right around here. So it will look like this. We'll come down, bounce up, come down, and then go. That would be the perfect look. But before we get that set up, it's likely that we'll see some level of counter trend bounce in line with Bitcoin, and then we'll do something like this and go, and that will be perfect. So that's what I'm looking for. Until we get into this time frame for the cycle lows for the S&P, for Bitcoin, and for gold, I'm not really going to have anything else to say. I've taken this position off, as I'm sure you're aware. I am currently waiting to see if we can get a trend line break out of here, waiting to see how these hold up. But given where we are in the cycle, we're quite late. I mean, we're on day 32, I think, at the moment. So it's perfectly reasonable to just expect this to continue to trend down into that 8th or 9th of May timeframe, and then we'll look to come out of here swinging. This is a 40-day cycle for the S&P, so we're talking plus or minus 10%. So 4 days either side of the 9th of May would be well within the expected timing band. I will be attempting to add a lot of exposure and get aggressive to the long side out of these cycle lows, and I'll be attempting to do that live on this channel. So if you're unfamiliar with cycles, or if you haven't seen me do this before, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn the notifications on, and we'll see if we can get some nice cycle low purchases targeting much higher numbers out of these cycle lows. So I'm not going to click through any more charts. That is basically the thesis. I will come back and do full TA at some point later in the week. I'll certainly be doing a deep dive TA over the weekend, but there's just no point in me keep repeating myself, I don't think. So as it stands, like I said, waiting for patiently some kind of counter trend bounce, resolve down, double bottom, and then go for the S&P 500. The same is true of gold, just playing patient, see if we do get that flush down. And the same is true of Bitcoin. Not getting too excited here until we get back above this, then we can start to get excited because this would be a very bullish structure. But as it stands, something like this and then a rejection that undercuts those low is perfectly to be expected. So one day at a time, as ever. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We just have to see what the market can give. I'm your boy Camel. I hope you found value here today. Hit that subscribe button, turn the notifications on if you want to see how I deal with all these markets in real time as a pro swing trader. I show every single one of my positions, win, lose, mistake, and I call out trade setups well in advance for free as I try to uphold the highest possible standard for YouTube traders. In the meantime, I hope you're doing well in life. Take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Hey, punk, stand up for yourself.
Stand up for yourself.
Hey, punk, stand up for yourself.
Stand up for yourself.